More of its nuclear deal commitments tonight, this time regarding uranium enrichment. It is a sign the regime in Tehran is willing to let the Iranian people suffer longer under U.S. sanctions. I-24 News defense correspondent Jonathan Regev has details.
It is another step in the decline of the 2015 nuclear deal. The president of the Islamic Republic announcing Iran will now renew its uranium enrichment at the nuclear plant in Fordow.
In the nuclear deal, we agreed that centrifuge would spin, but no gas would be injected into them. I will give this order to the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization today. We will begin gas injection.
The injection of uranium gas into the centrifuges is what allows uranium to be enriched, making this yet another breach of Tehran's commitments under the agreement. President Rouhani says that Trump's withdrawal from the deal and the sanctions that followed left him no choice, but says he's also willing to turn things around, but only if Washington does the same.
Whenever they fulfill their commitments, we will cut off the gas injection and won't inject gas into these centrifuges anymore. This step is reversible too.
Iran is clearly taking a tougher stand towards the United States and its allies in various arenas. It could be seen at the UN General Assembly when Rouhani refused to meet with President Trump. It could also be seen in the daring attack on the Saudi oil fields attributed to Iran, and this latest step showing that under the current conditions, Iran is not ready for any negotiations on a new deal.
The Iranian regime sees that not responding to U.S. sanctions is going to make it look weak. So the Iranian strategy for now is more for more. The more sanctions that are imposed against Iran by the Americans, which there have been, the more Iran will start moving away from the nuclear deal.
The developments are closely watched in Jerusalem. Israel strongly applauded the American administration for pulling out of the deal last year, but there is great concern that Iran may take advantage of the American lack of will for confrontation, as the U.S. now focuses mostly on the elections, now less than a year away.
If they can release themselves from the sanction, and if they can force America to go back to the agreement, this will be a strategic achievement.
In the past few years, Israel saw the Iranian entrenchment in the region as the biggest threat to its security. This new move by the Iranians may put the nuclear threat back on the top of the agenda.
Jonathan Regev reporting there. Well, for more, let's bring in Matt Brodsky, a senior fellow with the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Matt, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you.
So Iran appears to be getting ready to enrich its uranium even more, further violating the Iran nuclear deal. Is this an indication the deal is officially, finally dead?
It's been officially finally dead for a while. I should say it's been kept on life support. But the fact is, what they're doing at Fordow should constitute the greatest red line that exists for the U.S. and our allies in Europe. I mean, this is something that long ago, when the Obama administration first made the deal, and people on the right were saying, you need to come up with what penalties will happen if Iran breaks certain parts of its commitments, that there should be a very clear red line here. Unfortunately, that hasn't been done. Iran's plan, I should say, is not to just break out toward a nuclear weapon. It's to cheat here and there. And cumulatively, this is going to shrink the year that it's supposed to keep Iran away from having a nuclear weapon. So at its choice, we're not really going to know how close they are. That's a big problem.
But do you think Iranian President Rouhani is playing a game here? You know, if he's to be believed, I mean, he's saying that the enrichment can be reversed if the U.S. pulls back on its sanctions. I mean, it sounds like Iran is playing hardball one minute and maybe a game the next.
Correct. And the audience that it has is still the same one that it's had for the past year or so, even more. It's Europe. It's to try to get Europe to put pressure on the U.S. so that we'll either get back in the deal or that we'll just relieve sanctions in that. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has what it considers to be a maximum economic pressure campaign, but it's still renewed waivers on Fordow, this reactor we're talking about, and Iraq, the plutonium reactor. This needs to be revoked if we're going to have maximum amount of pressure. Otherwise, we're just treading water here.
So is that the leverage that the U.S. has, that the Trump administration has, is to keep the pressure on, keep these sanctions going in order to get Iran to stop?
Well, see, part of the perspective is that the reason Trump renewed very recently these waivers on these specific nuclear facilities was because it would keep Europe more on its side. But the fact is there's sand in the hourglass that is running out. There are going to be sunset provisions that are coming due very soon. So if we're just treading water, it is all to the benefit of Iran and its nuclear weapons program, which, thanks to Israel, we knew that they very much had. So I think we're going to need to apply more pressure, and the sooner the better.
And what about Israel, which takes, any steps Iran makes with its nuclear program as a threat? Where do they weigh in here?
I think there have been public and private warnings that the United States should be keeping its eye on the ball, and the ball, of course, being what Iran is up to with its nuclear program. I think it's unfortunate that it seems to be a little political paralysis, both in the United States with the impeachment, politicization, and of course the elections, and in Jerusalem, where there's not really any clear path forward to what the next government is going to look. But I think that needs to happen, because this is where the pressure and the power comes from. Europe is always lagging behind.
And, by most accounts, I mean, it could be months or maybe a year or more before these centrifuges, go forward in terms of enriching uranium. I mean, these centrifuges will certainly help Iran get to its nuclear program if it wants to.
Right. The IR-6s are 50 times better and stronger than the IR-1s and 2s that they had been using. So we're talking about they can use far less to enrich far more. And they were already cheating in July.
Sure.
I mean, they've been cheating all along, but this is something that Europe should be serious about. They should invoke the snapback mechanism, the dispute resolution mechanism at the UN. It's called for in the actual nuclear deal, so that we know that this is something that's very, very strong. Just another verbal warning, it's not going to cut it.
All right. Our thanks to Matt Brodsky. Matt, thanks for being here. Well, now to what could be another major development in the region. A published report